morning, everyone. Welcome to Amir's podcast. I'm your host, Amir Ardabili. This is where a real conversation meets purpose, where we bring together leaders who are shaping healthier minds, stronger bodies, and better community. Today is going to be a very special episode because I'm sitting with a very, very dear friend of mine that I've known for over 30 years, Dr. Cavitt, who is the medical director of Pediatric Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's great to have you, sir. Thanks for being here. And Dr. Cavitt is a distinguished child psychiatrist who has over 30 years of experience in work and helped many children and families overcoming their mental issues, anger management, behavioral problems, and a lot of developmental challenges. I mean, I, as a father of a special need child, I have a daughter who absolutely adore and love. Of course, my daughter's issues are different, but still, I'm sitting with a man who has helped many kids like my own child. And, we're going to dive into this very pressing issue that we all deal with. And as a coach, I've been seeing that for last, and I see it on a daily basis because I've been teaching for 40 years. A lot of kids come to me, a lot of parents come to me, well, my child has anger problem. My child has, he's being bullied at the school. He's so shy. He's so shy that he cannot make eye contact. And I see it. I see it every day, and I feel for those kids. I love them, and I want to work them. I want to work with them, and I want to help them out. But I can only do so much. So that's where Dr. Cavitt comes in, because I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor. I'm a coach. As a coach, I can do a lot, but I need professional help, and that's why I've had the honor and privilege of being able to work with Dr. Cavitt for many, many years. And he used to send some of his, patients to me, and I was able to work out with them and help them out. So these pressing issues and challenges that we have are, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called ADD or ADHD, and autism. We want to talk about a lot of this. I know, of course, we have a limited time. We probably do more episodes in the future, but I want to dive into some of the most pressing issues right now that people are having. And also what we want to talk about, we also like to explore how martial arts and mental health and a structured environment and discipline could help this kid to have, build more focus and confidence and resilience in today's world challenges that we have. So thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. I'm sure this is going to be a very powerful conversation, and I'm looking forward to this because it's going to be about science, it's going to be about structure and human spirit. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Go
it's
ahead,
my
sir.
pleasure. Let me just start with a slight disclaimer. So any views I expressed today are my own. They do not reflect any views of my employer or faculty at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital or at the University of South Florida. So they're uniquely based on four decades in the profession, my reading of the evidence-based science, and a lot of clinical experience. And then, as Amir said, my experience in martial arts is about 9 years of training with him. I retired early because I simply couldn't recover quickly enough to keep training. So it's just a pleasure to be with you. I'm looking forward to this
I didn't hurt him,
conversation.
trust me.
It was not Amir.
It was Dr. Levro.
I think it was an 8-year-old, but yeah.
That's amazing. Go ahead, my friend.
All right, so I think, as you were saying, I think in the broad categories we're talking about neurodevelopmental disorders that sort of capture under an umbrella the diagnoses of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. These have been on the rise. In terms of autism spectrum disorder, when I first started my education and training in the 80s, if we had a patient admitted to our hospital with autism, we would all find an excuse to go meet the patient and the family because we were very unlikely to see another one. In those days, the incidence was about 1 in 10,000. Now, of course, depending on the numbers you accept, it could be as low as 1 in 12, perhaps 1 in 30. For autism spectrum disorders, and ADHD is about 8 to 12% of the school-age population. So these are common. They're neurodevelopmental. We don't know, despite lots of claims otherwise. We really don't know why the increased manifestation of these disorders in the last 2 to 3 decades. There are a number of theories. Some of them are probably reasonably founded in science. Some of them probably are not. But we know they're increasing, and I think while we're diligently searching with good evidence-based science to try to find the etiologies and sources, simultaneously we have to figure out how to address these from as many perspectives as possible, and I think that's where science and medicine interact with martial arts, exercise, good health. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
So I remember from time to time you used to send some of your patients to train with us. And in some cases, I remember you and I had a conversation that, especially, first of all, before I even go there, there are many different school of thoughts when it comes to ADD or ADHD. Some people don't believe that's a real issue. And I have doubted it myself many times. I do apologize for that because I'm not a doctor, but I want you to, I do believe in the problem, that it does exist, but maybe you could explain that before I get into the part that I had experience with, but as far as the different philosophies and different, because some of them are not political motivated kind of garbage, and some of them are scientific. Sure. So we want to know about the scientific part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's still a point of controversy, I think, in the social discourse and in the political discourse. But the reality is, in the Western literature, the Western medical literature, there have been syndromes that meet almost exactly the same criteria as the 21st century definition of ADHD. Those syndromes have been described in the Western literature since the 1600s. An American physician described, again, almost exactly the same core symptoms in the early 1900s in this country.
Wow.
And so the phenomena have been around a long time. We simply never, I think, we didn't recognize it as a specific entity. It was, went by various diagnostic labels, and a lot of times it was just the children were just labeled as just bad kids or delinquent kids. And what we really know about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is it really is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's a disorder in brain connectivity that involves the cerebellum, which helps with coordination, the prefrontal cortex, where executive function, things like memory, the ability to stop, think, edit what we're going to say, edit what we're going to do, the ability to, on demand, switch attention from one topic to another or one task to another. What really separates us, if you will, from our nearest genetic cousins in the animal kingdom. Those are where the deficits reside. And it's neurodevelopmental. It's, it's as if the prefrontal cortex for a patient or child with ADHD is somewhat delayed in development. They range from 1 to 3 years behind their neurotypical peer. So it usually means they're going to arrive at the same endpoint. It's going to be later. And that's really the good news with a neurodevelopmental disorder like ADHD. One of the frequent questions parents ask me is like, how are we going to live through the teenage years with this level of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and dysregulated emotion? And, I can honestly reassure them that this gets better as they get older.
Yeah, we have seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen it with some of the students.
Absolutely. The hyperactivity, impulsivity start to improve in the early to mid-teens. Yes.
What's the difference between ADD and ADHD?
Yeah, so the current terminology, it all falls under the umbrella of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, okay. But there are subcategories. The most common category is combined inattentiveness and hyperactivity and impulsivity, but there is a subcategory of just ADHD inattentive presentation, and that really, those children don't have hyperactivity and impulsivity. They just really have difficulty sustaining attention or minimizing distractibility compared to their age and their classroom norms. And that's much more common in girls than it is in boys. So ADHD is diagnosed 2 to 3 times more often in boys because it's more observable. The boys are acting out, they're talking, they're doing things, saying inappropriate things. The girls are more likely to be sitting in the classroom very quietly, but absorbing less than their classmates because they're just distracted and daydreaming. So inattentive type is a more unique presentation, and because it's more subtle, it comes to clinical attention, usually later in elementary or middle school than the ADHD impulsive hyperactive type does.
Now, is this considered like a mental illness, or is it considered a disease or illness, or what category is
Yeah,
it?
it's really a neurologic disorder. It's a brain-based
Neurological,
disorder. It's not a disorder caused by bad parenting. It's not a disorder caused exclusively by bad diet. It's a neurologic disorder. It's really a delay in certain systems and parts of the brain connecting and maturing at the same rate.
Does it have anything to do with, genes? Could it be transferred from one generation to another because your parents had the same problem?
Yeah, it is highly genetic. Now, let me be quick to say we have not identified a specific ADHD gene, but when you look at family histories, there's an 80% chance if one parent has symptoms of ADHD, whether they've been fully diagnosed or not, there's an 80% chance that some of those symptoms will be transmitted to their children. So it is, yeah, it's highly genetic. And again, I think I used to tell my kids, I said, well, let's do a family history before you find your partner and start having children. So it's important to know family histories. So it's a disorder that's genetic. Mm-hmm. It's not from bad parenting. It's not from, you could take a child and from early in life and deprive them of nurturing warmth, good social and family connectedness, put them in a chaotic environment. You could create the neurologic condition of ADHD. But that, of course, fortunately, is a more extreme presentation that we fortunately don't have to see as often. But usually it's the confluence of family history, genetics, because most of the parents, by the time they're parents, they may well have outgrown many of the symptoms. And the ones that they have, they've learned how to cope with and manage, so they don't really give a lot of thought to it until they start seeing it in their own children. Sometimes parents will come in after we'll do an evaluation of the child. They'll say, as we went through this evaluation, I realized that sounds like me when I was their age. So it's a confluence of family history, genetics, and then really it becomes a matter of early detection and early intervention to try to help keep them on as normative a developmental trajectory as possible, academically, socially, emotionally, physical health, because that gives us a better chance of A, accelerating the neurodevelopmental aspects, and B, it helps avoid the pitfalls of what happens with a child with ADHD where you haven't identified the disorder and you haven't designed interventions, and they start to drift off track. Because children, if they're failing in school, they start to get demoralized, and they may start hanging out with other kids with similar issues. And by middle school and high school, we start to lose them to truancy, substance use, etc. Whereas if we can keep them on track in terms of ADHD, learning disorders, and other neurodevelopmental disorders, much better chance that they'll stay in school, develop good self-esteem, good self-worth, and move forward in life as a healthy individual.
So let's talk about medication.
Yes.
I know that there is special medication that is prescribed for patients with a high level of ADHD. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of different opinions in today's world. Some people are totally against it. Some people think that this medication is even has more side effects and bad for the kids. And in some cases is really helpful. I want to know what your thoughts are. Obviously you prescribe that for your patients.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing to say is medications are not curative. Mm-hmm. We are not curing ADHD with any one of a multitude of medications we sometimes will use to treat the symptoms. So we really are treating the symptoms. I would use the analogy of glasses for seeing. If I just need reading glasses, I can get through the world without my reading glasses. I can probably even read if I hold the book up close enough to my face. But it really does impair me. ADHD medicine is like when I put my glasses on, suddenly the world is clear. I can see with perfect vision, 20/20 vision, until I take the glasses off. And in this case, in the analogy, until the medication wears off at the end of the day, if it's a certain kind of medication like a psychostimulant like Adderall or Ritalin or Concerta, to name some brand names. It's controversial because these are powerful neuropsychiatric medications. I mean, they do alter brain
Are they
chemistry.
addictive?
They can be dependence causing in people who use them for other reasons. So dependence usually occurs in individuals who are seeking a euphoric high. They need they want to stay up all night and be racing around. So those people can become psychologically and physiologically addicted. Now they're also using doses usually far in excess of what we prescribe to treat the condition. So they are powerful medications. I mean, just as a side note, historical note, somebody would say, well, why would you use something that's called a psychostimulant medication, something that for the rest of us would alert us and get us focused, and get us maybe even a little bit hyper agitated, like too much caffeine might. Why would you use something like that in a child who's already hyperactive and impulsive? It's a little bit like, again, I would use the analogy of it's like stimulating your foot to put the brakes on in your car. That's what the medications do, is they help turn on and connect those parts of the brain and get the same reaction time and attention and concentration that somebody who doesn't have ADHD has without that medication. These were discovered serendipitously in the 1940s. Stimulants had been around in World War II. The Nazi Germany had they used them in the military. The political leaders used them. These had been developed in the 30s. But there was a doctor at Brown University who was in a classroom situation of students who had post-encephalitic developmental delays. And they were disinhibited, dysregulated, hyperactive, and impulsive. And for whatever reason, counterintuitively, he thought, I wonder what happens if we give them some dextroamphetamine. And he noticed immediately that they calmed and they were able to be more appropriate. So that's serendipitously how that developed. But these are simply tools like a pair of glasses to help moderate the symptoms of ADHD so that the child or the individual can better self-regulate and make choices about what they want to focus and concentrate on, what they want to complete as a task, what they want to say as it's coming out of their mouth or do. They're not curative. There's a tiny bit of evidence that methylphenidate helps accelerate myelination of parts of the brain. That's if you will, the fatty insulation that goes around the brain that helps speed up nerve conduction or signal transmission. But it's so tiny, I think we really can't say that the medication helps recover from the illness. It's a treatment to moderate the symptoms. And then there are non-stimulants, things by trade name like Strattera or Intuniv, that are about 50% less potent than a stimulant, but still have some of those same benefits without as much of the side effect. I think they're controversial because they are powerful medications. I think that in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to use medication as a tool. And I say that because it's only one of the cornerstones of treatment. It's not about just medication alone. It has to be interventions at school with IEPs or individualized education plans or 504 plans where there's a formal recognition that this student has some impairing conditions, and in the classroom they will be accommodated in certain ways. By the same token, these children probably need the same kind of accommodation plan at home. If they're in a family with other children, and luckily the other children don't have ADHD, the child with ADHD is going to be parented a little differently than the children in the family who don't. So I tell parents, you need a 504 plan for your child at home. They get some special considerations, some accommodations. And that's not to enable bad behavior, but to help to accommodate for the deficits that are occurring and help them move through life with fewer obstacles. So there's that. There's trying to promote good, healthy sleep, because that's important for all of us, and especially important if you're have some neurodevelopmental delays. Good whole nutrition, and really good exercise.
That was my next question. If nutrition has any kind of a relationship with this, nutrition is a big part, isn't it?
Nutrition's important. It's obviously a cornerstone of good health for all of us. I think it's even more imperative for a child with any kind of neurodevelopmental delay. Now, I think again that becomes controversial because people want to look at the various additives in our ultra-processed foods and try to make linkage between those and the condition of ADHD.
I guess my question I think what comes up to my head is like, say if you already have ADHD and you're a kid, and then you're a family that you allow your child to drink soda, for example. If you have any kind of a stimulus that adds to that excitement, that extra, brain activity,
Yeah.
I mean, for a lack of a better, explanation. So, I think nutrition definitely have a big role.
I think so, and I think parents do elimination diets where they'll eliminate sugar or soda or dairy or citrus or various glutens, for example. There's not a lot of replicable data for elimination diets. You'll get a publication that says, "Oh, it was amazing. Back in the early 90s, there was a study in Australia that said eliminating citrus solved ADHD." But they could never replicate the results. And so you get these amazing results. There is a linkage between food dyes and ultra-processed foods, and certainly high fructose corn syrup or sugary diets. There is a linkage in terms of making symptoms worse. Is it really causative? I don't think we can say it's causal. And you can do elimination diets in a lot of our children with ADHD, and it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. But it's just good common sense that the healthier we can keep their diet, the more likelihood they and everyone else are going to feel better. And I think, we can cut out using candy as treats and rewards. Yeah. Halloween candies are one of my least favorite things about that holiday.
I see effect immediately with some of the kids have candy. Immediately I can see the difference in their attitude.
Sure.
The sugar.
Yeah, you can see that sugar high, sugar rush. But you can see that in children that are neurotypical as well. Just go to a kid's birthday party after the birthday cake.
I have so many questions and I don't even know where to start. So let me go to again. Is this a condition that you could outgrow?
Yes, it's neurodevelopmental. It does typically get better with age.
Fantastic.
Depending on which statistics you look at, about 50% of adults diagnosed with ADHD as children will no longer really be impaired by ADHD symptoms. Half of then the other remaining 25%, they may have some impairments, but they can accommodate. And then another 25% really may still need accommodations, may still need to be using medication to treat the symptoms.
The next question, Dr. Cavitt, is, I've been in business for 40 years, teaching martial arts. I've trained generations of children, and you were a big part of it for the last 30 years. At least I've trained your kids. Now, I've had tremendous success with a lot of the children that came to me with ADD and ADHD, and a lot of them were on medication. Later on, they were taken off medication because of training. But one thing I've experienced, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of these children, they were so intelligent, so smart, that sometimes I feel like they were getting bored because they were not being challenged intellectually and physically. So therefore, the moment you challenge them, you got their attention. Again, this is my observation, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But I've seen, like, for example, when I got them in a class and I got them in a deep conversation about something that they couldn't understand, and then it was catching their attention, and physically, I worked them so hard that they wanted to go to bed at 5:30, 6 p.m. And I could see the difference. All of a sudden, they start calming down and becoming better and better and better. Some of those kids that I trained 40 years ago, they're bringing their kids to me now. And some of them that they were at age 10 or 15, they're bringing the grandkids to me right now. And I don't get, of course, older, as you know.
You have not.
But if you could explain that part to me,
Sure. I think... Well, I think if we look at the data and you look at IQ testing, it belies the myth that these are bored geniuses. By IQ testing, a child with ADHD is about 10 points below their neurotypical counterpart at the same age and grade level. Now, that can be an artifact of just having ADHD and not testing as well. So I think that boredom, I don't know that it's boredom because they're brilliant, although they made a brilliant choice to come to you. I think it's that's one of the fundamental deficits in ADHD is they need high stimulus to keep them focused. Either high external stimulus, which is where screen dependence comes in and they love gaming all day or YouTube or whatever, or high internal stimulus, meaning they have a high emotional attachment, positive attachment to something. And I think what, having, from my profession, but also having been in martial arts with you for almost a decade in the past, I think the unique benefit of sports is because it can be a high external stimulus activity, but also a high internal affinity. They love what they're doing, whether it's martial arts or baseball or football or tennis or swimming, whatever that may be. So I think there's part of that motivation to be there that helps keep them focused. But I think more uniquely in martial arts, because there's so much more one-to-one supervision and coaching, even when you're at the class level, you immediately know if somebody's not following instructions or acting outside the rules of engagement. And I think the value of martial arts, especially in children with ADHD, is that because there's that individualized attention and there's an emphasis on mutual courtesy, mutual respect, connecting not only with your fist, but connecting emotionally with your training partner, your sparring partner. I think that those help build those relationships that without that kind of activity, a child with ADHD can kind of literally just blur through life. And children with ADHD historically, based on the evidence, have more difficulty obtaining and maintaining friendships because the ones with hyperactivity and impulsivity, they say and do things that at a certain point their peer group just won't tolerate anymore, and they can be shunned or ostracized. And I think martial arts helps teach them to be attuned to the others.
So the structured environment of physical activities and physical training does help.
Oh yes,
that's something I want to make sure the viewers could, because this is something, of course, obviously, this is what I do for a living. Obviously, I advertise my school because I teach respect, I teach discipline, but I've seen a lot of improvement in a lot of my kids, because you'd be surprised how many kids come to me and parents tell me, "Oh, my kid has ADD, ADHD." So I hear that all the time. Do you think this is this something that, of course, existed ever since, you told me for many years,
Yes.
but do you think it's growing? Is it becoming a bigger issue? Because it seems like we get to hear about it more often.
Yeah. Well, I do. I think it's not just a matter of awareness and public understanding. I think the actual numbers of children presenting with ADHD have been increasing. Yeah. I do think that. And I think that, again, I think there's a growing awareness when parents of children with ADHD is that they can benefit from structured athletic endeavors. And, I tell a lot of my parents, I refer them to whatever sport their child is interested in, but I'll say, I'll mention martial arts and they go, oh, well, he already has trouble with, hitting and kicking. Yeah. And I say, well, actually, that's where martial arts can be really beneficial, because you learn how to self-regulate. And you learn that if you get angry and lose control, first of all, your sensei or your master is going to stop it. And secondly, you're going to figure out you can't compete well if you lose control.
Exactly.
And so it helps you internalize that sense of control while you're engaged in interacting.
You lose your composure the moment you get angry. And it's one thing I teach my fighters. You never fight out of anger, out of frustration. You have to be calm and collective.
And it's that sense of trying to, that sense of self-awareness and stopping and processing and thinking is one of those areas that is affected by ADHD, and one of those areas that you're really training, whether it's in martial arts or other sports. I think martial arts provides a more intense training experience, if you will. Because, if you're playing baseball, you're out on the field, but you don't have a coach side by side with you whispering in your ear. And in martial arts, you've got your sensei or your...
I am so grateful to you for being here, because I'm learning so much. I've known you for a long time, but I'm learning more today than I've ever learned in the last 30 years. Thanks for being here. One last question about ADHD, and then we go to the next subject. Is ADHD a disability?
It is. ADHD because when I say ADHD, I mean that it's now been formally defined, identified, and we're starting to craft treatment interventions. So yes, it qualifies under the Americans with Disability Act as an identified disability, and therefore warrants accommodations under the Disabilities Act.
Okay. Next big issues we have in society: bullying. I'm sure you get a lot of patients that they start having emotional issues, emotional problems, depression, which starts from a very big problem right now in today's society, growing bullying. I've seen kids commit suicide. I've seen kids hurt themselves, and they don't want to go to school. I face that every day. Oh my God, I have so many students that have parents that brought them to him because they were bullied. Of course, when I'm done with them, nobody bullies them, I promise you that.
Or only once.
Only once, and that's it. I have many, many good examples I can say, but I want to make sure you could help us and understand it more scientifically in terms of what it does to the brain and to the child's behavior when they're being bullied.
Yeah, again, and I think it's no surprise, and I think everybody probably personally can relate to some incidents of bullying in their childhood. I think to some degree there's that natural occurrence of a little bit of aggressive behavior and bullying and taunting and teasing that to some degree helps develop some grit and resilience, but it crosses a line, and I don't think the line is defined per se by just a specific act, but it's also defined by the resilience of the individual who's the target of the bullying behavior. So yeah, it does affect children. Actually, adults can be bullied too. So it affects everybody psychologically.
Do you think it's because we also have become softer, a lot softer in our society? I mean. Okay, growing up with my dad, where I come from, if I would have gone to my dad and said, "Dad, somebody pushed me today," my dad would just look at me and say, "You know what? You come to me one more time, I'm going to push you myself, I'm going to smack you hard." Because we learned how to fight back. Yeah. It wasn't about just the physical. I mean, my dad, and at least where I come from, in old days, they gave us so much confidence and they let us grow up tough,
Right.
And right now, kids are so soft. Kids are so soft. But again, in the same time, because I'm a coach and I'm a teacher, I have to be sensitive to the subject. I don't want to bully them myself. Say, "Well, how come you're not tough?" So
yeah, I think. Look, I think bullying still goes on to a large degree. Maybe there's a little more surveillance and security and protection and prevention for bullying, especially in schools now, but it still occurs on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say, again, I would say it's having bullies or being bullied is not part of the recipe for growing up to be a sound, secure, strong individual. I think that, yeah, and I grew up, in sort of similar background, rural areas of Kentucky where you learned how to fight early.
You stand up for yourself.
You had to, because no one else was going to. But it still doesn't leave you unaffected by the whole experience. In some ways, you're still on the defensive and hyper alert and making sure. So I think it's, and again, I think, as human beings, as part of the animal kingdom, there are just natural levels of competition and aggression that we have to help our kids learn how to navigate and develop grit and resilience. So I don't know that it's softer. In some ways, vicariously, I think our kids are actually exposed to more violence than certainly I was as a child through their video games and all the interactive media that they have, because that kind of input of violent imagery and engaging in violent behaviors, even though it's virtual, has its psychological effects as well. And so I actually think that, I think, and this is, again, just my personal point of view, I think that too many hours of gaming, especially in violent games,
the movies,
too many
the
hours
kind
of
of
video,
stuff that we see.
I think it desensitizes everybody to violence and aggression, and in some ways normalizes certain kinds of responses to the point that people are more prone to react aggressively and violently now than maybe when I was at least growing up. I mean, you had examples in your life of who could be aggressive and violent, but you weren't immersed in it day in and day out in this intensive media that's affecting your brain growth and your hormone release and your adrenaline release. So I actually think, I think maybe bullying is exaggerated these days by gaming and social media, and echoed and magnified by social media, in that it becomes an echo chamber of gossip and innuendo and downright slurs that are hurtful. I mean, it's one thing to say sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Not a true statement. Names still hurt too, and now you have social media that will echo it around tens or hundreds or thousands of people who will echo it back to you, and it exists in perpetuity, So I think in some ways this is a tougher time to be a child and an adolescent than it was when you and I were growing up, despite the fact that, yeah, we did learn how to use our fist from a pretty early age.
That's why I say come to Amir Academy.
Shut off social media.
Yeah. Come to Amir Academy. Let me teach you how to not to be bullied. We have shown tremendous results with our children, and I'm very proud of it. We don't promote violence, obviously, but we promote self-respect, self-awareness.
Right.
And we also teach them how to stand up for themselves.
Well, I think it's self-confidence too. I mean, bullies inherently recognize who might be a easy target and who may not be an easy target. And I think people who are confident in their physical abilities and their physicality, I mean, they can obviously still be jumped and bullied.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're not as readily identified as a potential victim. And I mean, I remember one of the first things, and maybe an ongoing theme you taught us, was, I'm teaching you self-defense. I'm teaching you how to defend and how to take the offensive if necessary. But the best defense is walk away from the situation before it becomes a situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I always teach my kids, I said the best martial arts technique you could do is run away.
Yeah.
Run as fast as you can. If you can't run, and you have absolutely no way of getting away from this, and you have to fight back, and then you hit first.
Then you have
because
skills.
Action is faster than reaction, so I don't want people to be reactionary. Anyway, the next subject, and again, later on you could tell us that the relationship between all this, if there is any, shyness. Because the issues that I deal with in my school with the kids come from different background, ADD, ADHD, shyness, and then I also have anger. So let's talk about shyness, and then we go back to anger management after that.
Sure. Yeah, I think, again, there's a certain inherent element of introversion and shyness for a fairly significant part of the population. I think that I would say timidity, or the fearfulness of interacting, engaging, is maybe the darker side of shyness. And I think that what we as parents, trainers, doctors can do is promote self-confidence and self-worth. And so I think, again, one of the things that happens in athletic endeavors, and especially the martial arts, is they learn to be confident in their abilities. They realize they have a certain level of competence. And it's not just in their physicality, their conditioning, how well they can kick or strike or toss, but it's their ability to stop and think themselves through situations and relationships that are admittedly controlled and staged, unless you're, when you're in a dojo. But I think they emerge with that sort of self-confidence. Now, I think you can get that same self-confidence from athletic endeavors and training hard for other sports as well. But I think that's really important, and it's just part of, again, the whole approach to building healthy kids and healthy adolescents. So I think also in martial arts specifically, in terms of shyness, you learn how to engage with others. You really have to engage with others because you're going to have sparring partners. And so you learn how to interact with people and how to remain courteous and respectful and not angry when their feet and fists are flying at you, because you're taught how to manage that situation and then how to counter. So I think it's about confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, self-respect.
All of that could help every one of these situations.
Yes.
And anger management.
Anger management. Again, I want to loop that back to ADHD. children with ADHD many times will have more difficulty self-regulating their emotions. And it's more because that emotional outburst occurs before they have time before the prefrontal cortex of their brain, the executive function of their brain, has time to intervene. I mean, if we stopped and thought, if I stop and think about any given time during the day, the kinds of thoughts I just had or the kinds of feelings and emotional reactions I just had to something someone said or done, if I didn't filter or edit what I said or what I did, I'd probably be in big trouble. So we all have that ability. If we don't have a neurodevelopmental disorder or an executive function disorder, we have that ability to process. And even the brain at the unconscious level filters out most of that stuff before it ever rises up to conscious level of thought and awareness. But when you have a neurodevelopmental disorder like ADHD, that filtering process doesn't work so well, and suddenly they're saying and doing things that they may be very remorseful about within moments. They wish they hadn't said it. And it's things that all of us have probably thought and said or wished we had done but knew better. So anger control a lot of times is about understanding, helping understand what are the triggers, what are the environments that tend to trigger anger, what are the warning signals, and to start practicing how to modulate it and how to regulate it. I think martial arts is good, as I said earlier, because you have to learn that if you get angry, you lose control, you're going to lose your match.
Exactly.
You're not going to spar well,
Exactly.
You're not going to train well. I think that also learning how to, one of the things we did in martial arts, one of our, at least in the days when we trained, we used to sit, and we would deep breathe and relax before we started training.
Exactly.
And we'd cool down and do the same thing. And so that kind of meditative, calm experience, cultivating that, meditation has been shown to be one of the effective interventions in helping with ADHD. But what it really is doing, I would argue, is physiologically, it's allowing you to consciously, actively lower your adrenaline release by deep breathing and relaxation. And it's also teaching you how to regulate, if you're feeling angry, how to sit through it, how to breathe through it, how to let it pass versus holding on to it and magnifying it and letting it build up. So those are all things that can be learned and taught.
So interesting that you just said that, because we just had the Battle of Tampa Bay a week ago, and so one of my fighters was getting ready to get in the ring. It was a sold-out event, and I go to him and I stand and he goes like this. I said, "What's wrong with you?" He says, "I'm just pissed off." I said, "Pissed off for what?" I said, "Pissed off for what? Yeah. You go in the ring, you're gonna have to fight. Get rid of that right now. I'm gonna pull you out. I'm not gonna let you fight. Start breathing." You're like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, I don't want you going there angry. You don't need to be angry. He's not your enemy. You're just going there to compete.
Right.
Go there." I said, "You can take his head off if you want, calmly, not with anger.
Right.
Cut that up." I mean, I had to talk to him immediately. We only have 1 minute to get him, and guess what? Immediately started breathing deep breath, and then he got in there and he won. He became one of the best fighters of the night. He won beautifully, but he thought he had to, because what happened, I've experienced, and I always tell my fighters, and then we work so much on the psychology of combat rather than the physical part itself, is that when you go in there angry, already when you getting ready to fight, your adrenaline is kicking, your heart rate is already going up because you're nervous, your anxiety.
Sure. Your
heart rate is up to 120, 130 as if you already have done 3 rounds. So imagine you go in there and physically now fighting, your heart rate goes to 160, 170, you just punch yourself out and you cannot fight anymore. And that changes immediately. Right. That changes everything. So thanks for explaining that, because I want my fighters to listen to this podcast, and they're going to realize, they understand there is a scientific reason behind this.
Yeah, and I would also say that, anger, while that's the emotion you see, sometimes anger is coming from deep-seated fear, anxiety, worry. There are a lot of things that trigger anger. It's not just about rage, but it can all be managed. I remember, I think, again, back during our earlier years when you had people from law enforcement would come in, and they were talking about target training with, handheld weapons and whatnot, and that, you really have to breathe deeply, calmly, regularly if you expect to hit a target. And I think we all know that if you've engaged in any kind of firearms training. box breathing if you're.
I don't know anything but guns.
No, I know you don't. I'm speaking from my own personal
I'm
experience.
just joking.
Zero ownership, but
No, I only have like 110 firearms.
yes. But again, it's that same point that
absolutely.
if you're going to be effective, you have to be in control.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's through deep breathing. I think, Hollywood misportrays a lot of this.
Of course.
They show the fights. I was even thinking of samurai movies, they show this rage and this anger. I will guarantee, I think, we both agree that if you're in a sword fight, the last thing you want to do is lose your temper.
Oh, absolutely.
Because then you lose your head.
Oh, exactly.
So exactly. You have to challenge that energy. Obviously, physiologically, you're in overdrive, but you have to be able to channel it and remain in control.
It has to be control. It has to be a control. You have to be in control of your emotions.
Right.
When I was in the military, I learned that in a very early age that, otherwise, you only have one life. It's going to go bad very fast.
You become the target.
My friend, I will never get tired of this conversation. We learn so much. Thank you so much for being with me. But I want to talk about you a little bit. I want people to know that you're not just a regular doctor. You're a badass doctor. You're a martial artist. I've had the honor of training your wonderful kids. You have raised some of the most wonderful kids. I know Layla is a doctor now, and she has her own practice. I know Ian is a software engineer, and he was one of my top fighters with the record of 12 wins and 2 losses. Everybody hates sparring with him. They love him to death, but nobody wants to fight with him because he's just right in your face every second. What does Connor do right now?
Connor is about to finish up his bachelor's degree in early elementary education. So
Fantastic.
He's going to be a teacher.
And you have an older son, I forgot his name.
Alex.
Yep. How's Alex doing?
Alex doing well.
He's doing good.
Well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember I've trained every one of them. Now, Alex didn't train. He didn't stay with class as much, but I know Connor trained with me for years. Layla trained. She was very good. And, of course, Ian is just, I love that kid. I've been begging him. I said, please bring one of your championship belts so I can put them on the wall here.
Oh, I'll remind him.
And son of a gun, just keep ignoring me. But
well, I'm a little busy.
Tell him that Amir says I need one of your belts here.
I will remind him.
It's just a great honor to have him. And
I think it's an honor for
he's
him.
been part of the academy for so long. But my friend, it's a great honor. You've always been there for us. You've trained with us for a long time. You supported the academy. You always support our charities that we do every year. I want to thank you for that. Thank you for being my friend, and I've learned so much from you. And I've learned, and the things that I learned from you, I take it and actually use it in class with my children, because the kids that I have here, I love them to death, and I want to see the results. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you have taught me, because I take that to my physical training and I combine it, and so I really appreciate it. But one thing about you that a lot of people don't know, that you're also a musician. So, this is like a perfect triangle. A doctor. It's huge. Head of the whole entire Pediatric Psychiatry Department of Johns Hopkins. That's huge. Then a badass martial artist and a musician. It couldn't be a better triangle.
Well, I think they're related, and I'll relate the musicianship back to ADHD. Practicing a performance instrument, like practicing martial arts, is a great treatment intervention, part of a whole plan for treating ADHD, because ADHD affects the cerebellum, coordination. ADHD affects the prefrontal cortex, that ability to make yourself stop and think and focus. When you're playing a musical instrument, you've got to do all of that. You've got to coordinate movement. You have to be reading sheet music. You have to be listening to what's happening, so you're in tempo and in time and in tune with everyone else. And so I frequently tell parents, they'll say, what kind of activities? And I'll mention athletics, martial arts specifically, and I'll mention musical performance, because all of those things help promote that kind of brain growth and development. And for me, it's just, again, a natural outcome. The same reasons that I came to martial arts training, which was to be the best physical self I could be, and I'll have to say I've never been in better shape before or since our training together.
You always look great.
I also haven't as many aches and pains before or since. But the same thing, that drove me in that satisfaction at the end of a training session, where you just have that satisfaction of knowing you just did everything you could, the best you could. There are things to learn, but you did some things well. This is the same kind of gratification I get out of playing.
That's fantastic. Well, one thing I was never able to do is music. I tried. I've broken 4 guitars because I used to get frustrated because my fingers got so tired and I smashed the wall. So I need anger management.
Well, it's never too late.
I need to come and see you. My friend, thank you so much again. I appreciate you. And
It's been my pleasure.
And for viewers, thanks for joining us. Please go on YouTube and subscribe to our channel and like us. I think this was one of our more powerful, probably the most powerful conversation we've ever had, and very helpful to the parents and very helpful to everyone. So we appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, and thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.